Hello and welcome back to And It's Live, the history of the Premier League. I'm Martin Ramsey, your host. Apologies for the 2-week break, some early summer travels for some of us, getting in the way. Life often gets in the way of pods, but we are back in the saddle. Welcome back, David. Trust you're well, refreshed.
Yes, I had a nice little trip to Nashville there. Music City, USA, and all. This episode, someone gave me this gift, and I thought it might, for any Newcastle fans watching today, I don't know if you can see this, if I hold it up. It's a bracelet that says, "This too shall pass," but on the inside it says, "But fucking hell." And I think that actually sums up the episode we're going to do if you're of a Newcastle United persuasion.
For sure. Adam Thornton is with us as well. How are you, Adam? A funny season. This is going to be interesting to see how it kind of plays out. Maybe not with the drama of some of the other ones that we've done so far.
Yeah, it's a hangover-y type season, isn't it? I'm doing good, thank you. Enjoying World Cup fever, but equally looking forward to going back 30 years when everything was a lot better.
Well, quite. But as David hinted, not for everybody. And St James's Park is probably a good place to start. Ruud Gullit, of course, in situ. Ruud Gullit, one of the big success stories of the Premier League in its infancy in the 1990s, I think. And, Newcastle had gone from that light and brightness of Kevin Keegan, certainly a style change, a tone change with Kenny Dalglish, and the Kenny Dalglish who was in the kind of mindset he was in by this point. And Ruud Gullit just seemed to tick all our entertainment boxes, as we discussed before, but not quite going well, and a fairly horrific start to the season. A defeat home to Aston Villa. Okay, John Gregory's Aston Villa are a decent side. Then go to George Graham's Spurs and are absolutely turned over 3-1 after taking the lead. Spurs stretch out in front. A defeat at Southampton, and the Southampton side, of course, who were fortunate enough to stay in the division late on last season, thought they had the ideal opportunity at home to Wimbledon, and very much in front, 3-1 in front just after half-time. And Gareth Ainsworth, he of the hair, with a last minute, well, you get two actually, but a last minute winner just is not happening. Shearer was sent off on that opening day against Aston Villa. He's back from suspension for the visit of Sunderland, but David, shock horror, does not start and is sat on the bench looking on in the rain as Newcastle are humbled by a Sunderland side that we'll talk a wee bit about in a minute. And this very much is the end.
This was seismic at the time. Even to non-Newcastle fans, even up here in Scotland, where we were, this was enormous. I remember the game so clearly, Martin. A filthy night. I mean, a real proper horrible, the rain that you think will never ever stop. And I remember actually I the highlights of this on one of those midweek match of the days, which are always, I don't know why, they just are a bit more special, a midweek match of the day. But I didn't know the score. I'd avoided the score to watch it, and watching it, you're thinking, "Ooh," when the team news came in, that's really interesting. And then the performance and Sunderland, as we've mentioned, who are really crest of a wave at the moment and really good in the final third of the pitch, get the victory. The noise, I remember, coming from the Newcastle support was absolutely this tumult of boos and cascading down from the stands, and Gullit standing there with that sort of faux impassive look that we all know a doomed manager tries to adopt when he knows you can't win that fight. You can't win that fight with Alan Shearer. It looks like you are saying this is your fault. And it looks like you're trying to take him on. And whether or not that's true, or whether it is just genuinely a simple, I am not picking this player because I don't believe he's the right man for the job, because of all the noise that's attached, because of the interest that's in it, because of the focus that will come, it is more than that. When you drop somebody who's not merely, the captain, the best player and beloved, but the absolute emblem of the club, totemic of everything about them, and you drop him, you make a statement. Whether you want to or not, you do. And Gullit was too old, too experienced. He'd been through too much. He'd been that player at Milan where this had happened to him. He knew. And it does prompt the old, was this suicide by cop, Martin? Was this, right, I'm going to force everything to a head tonight, one way or another, or either back me or sack me type thing? I don't know. It looked that way. And then, of course, everything. I mean, the weather was portentous. The type of performance they put in was portentous. You couldn't, you literally, if you're doing a drama, to the Ruud Gullit story, this is how you script it. And Shearer, of course, sitting there on the bench with a face like thunder, letting it be known, really, I'm sure, through his reps and whatnot, what the script was. That was not a battle Ruud Gullit could win, and he didn't.
It wasn't just Shearer he left on the bench, of course. Duncan Ferguson as well. Both of them sat there watching. And he resigns, gentlemen. What manager? Is it even fathomable now, conceivable, of a manager under that kind of pressure saying, you know what, this isn't for me? And his press conference really didn't say much about results. Mostly the press in this country are wild. They're getting into my family rather than me. That's a line. It's intrusive. I'm off. It's just a bizarre way to part. Before I come to Adam to talk about a few details around this, do you know why that evening, David, you would not have been concentrating on events at St James's Park and therefore were able to enjoy the match of the day highlights without knowing the score?
I do not. No, I assume I was possibly at a game.
You would have been at home watching, biting your nails, crossing everything that could be reasonably crossed, as Rangers battled in Parma to go through to the Champions League. That was the second leg of that qualifying round that night.
I should have. I remember the first leg more, but I actually have Colin Hendry's shirt from that night, the away leg in Parma.
Still sweating, I imagine. That. It's absolutely battered. But yes, that's a slight aside. Adam, this game against Sunderland, like the game at Spurs, like obviously the game with Wimbledon, Newcastle have the lead. They have control.
Yeah.
And they just can't see that out. Usually a sign that it's not enough just to chuck players on a pitch and expect good players to beat less good players. There's just a lack of real cohesion and belief there, no?
Definitely, totally agree. And I think I'm not surprised that Gullit resigned. I'll be surprised now for sure. But some of those decisions that you've mentioned there, the mood music, the start of the season, reeks of a man that didn't want to be there. To be honest, whether it's jobs too big, chairman's too intrusive, not what he thought he was going to get by taking the step down, and maybe his world from Chelsea to Newcastle. And you know that way it's like if you're moving job and you take a bit of a sideways move, you think, well, if I don't get the interview for this sideways move, I must be pretty terrible. It's got that kind of vibes that he probably expected to go in there and everybody would love him because it's Ruud Gullit and oh my God, we've got this messiah in that is basically doing us a favour by turning up. I think the fact he picked a fight with literally the only person in the Northeast that you would not pick a fight with leads me to suggest that he didn't fancy that anymore. And
working the ticket is called now. I think it's
big time, isn't it? Yeah. Couple of those decisions.
Well, Adam will remember this. It happened to Gullit at his first spell at Milan. He got forced out when he didn't want to go, and the fans were raging. He went to Samp, where he played brilliantly, but he also was putting out a few pot shots about Milan and the manager, and then he gets brought back. So he had to know it had happened to him.
But
yeah,
I just don't think he would care. I think he'd do the same thing 15 times in a row. It's that personality that he is. I think he'll just be like, even though I've been wrong 15,000 times in the past, I'm still right this time,
yeah.
and it's just one of those things.
It's an interesting one. I add Southampton away to that list of Newcastle going ahead. They were 1-0 up at half time, lose 4-2. So there's something that's not quite right there. We have to talk about this really, and I'll start with you, Adam, because let's get this clear again. Big things are expected of Ruud Gullit, the football manager. He's been an absolute world-class player, incredibly decorated. He, for understandable reasons, starts that managerial career in England because he has ended his playing career in England. That transition at Chelsea, that opportunity came up, too good to turn down, and it gets going that way. This is pretty much it. He's a wee spell. I mean, by we, I mean part of the season at Feyenoord. Like years later, I mean, what, 4 or 5 years later, tries again at LA Galaxy. No, very briefly out in Russia, I'm sure. This is it. This really is it. And I don't know. I mean, clearly, famously, he has a strong personality. He could have, and I think he would admit, should have gone to the 1994 World Cup. But again, he got on the wrong side of another man that you don't really want to get on the wrong side of, and that Dick Advocat. And maybe it's just this transition from an utter, almost supernaturally gifted, classy footballer working with players who can't do what you could do so easily. Say, I can't be fucked with these absolute jobbers. I'm just going to be a good pundit and swan about Europe because, let's be honest, far better life.
And I guess I was going to say, where is he going to go? But you've outlined the two places that big names go to make themselves think they're still relevant, or aging players necessarily. And I think we could probably extrapolate that to managers as well. Nowadays, if no one in the top 5 leagues wants anything to do with you, you're probably not going to sully yourself in their terms by pitching up in Austria, Belgium, Scandinavia, because you think that you are better than that. They're not going to play the same wages. They're not going to pay the same wages. If you're getting a bit pissed off, with the greatest respect, at the quality at, say, Chelsea or Newcastle, trying to pitch up in middle of the road Belgium and get those players on board with what you're going to do when they're arguably even less capable, or certainly less proven, you go to paydays, don't you? You go to LA, you go to Turkey, and you try and do something there. So yeah, I can't remember the context, being what, 13 maybe at this time. I watched that, listened to that Parma game with that was the Parma game. It was during the afternoon, wasn't it?
No, that was the first year. That was UEFA Cup game.
Yeah, so I was listening to that one in school on a surreptitious headphone, but obviously not this one. But there's nowhere really for him to go. Like, so you're kind of like, I deserve better here, but I'm not getting it. So,
well, there's also something here that's, I think, an important point to make, Martin. You and I are fascinated by the changing way television covers football over the decades, and this is the first era, and it's just beginning, but this is the first era where punditry is a full-time job. It is not like Trevor Brooking turning up. I mean, if you look at, say, Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville now, for example, they go into the Sky Studio Monday at like 3 o'clock and they're there right through to midnight, and match of the day staff, it's exactly, you're expected to watch everything. And I think that there are two types of football people. There are the people who have got that burning, I have to be involved, I have to be working, I miss the dressing room so much, I cannot do this, my competitive urge is such, I will just sit in the house and fidget. Frank Lampard is a great recent example, who kept coming back as a manager, right? Even though others might have said,
it's a replacement for playing.
It's a replacement for playing.
Yeah.
Then you get the other type who might dip their foot in coaching because they think that, realise they don't enjoy it, and then go off and do something else. And obviously there's the players who just see it as a job and they don't care. The second they're retired, they're never watching another game of football, never mind coaching on it. And I think that is now very much seen as an alternative career path for ex-footballers, Martin. You know, you can go and you can work for a broadcaster. Might not necessarily even be the country that you played in. It might be covering the league you played in, but it might be, there's a lot of ex-Premier League players out in... Did you know Robbie Mustoe is a very famous pundit in the US? I did not know that. I've learned that
Years
during
now,
this World Cup. I did not know that. But yeah, it's now a career, and obviously they've all got a podcast now. You know, to rival us. I like to think we led the way in that. But yeah, I know that former, in the context of this show, former Everton, Tottenham, and Nottingham Forest star Richard Gough, of course, ex-Rangers, once told me, I asked him, he had a brief spell in management at Livingston, the Scottish club, and he came in when they looked searched for relegation, and he kept them up. It was an extraordinary achievement for a rookie manager. And then he resigned and he never came back into it. And I asked him, why not? You know, you were good at this, clearly. What you know, and long term, he would have been a candidate for the Rangers job in much the same way as Vincent Kompany is a candidate for Manchester City one day. And he told me a story. He said they were going to play a match at the weekend against Celtic, and all week he said to his team, don't give away set pieces near the box, no cheap set pieces near the box, because they're great delivery and they've got Hartson and Larsson and Sutton, and will concede. He said 3 minutes into the game, one of his players, a stupid foul, unnecessary tackle, gives away a free kick, Celtic put it in the box and scored. And he's raging, and he turned round to Archie Knox, who'd gone with him as his assistant, and he said, Archie, I've worked on this all week. We've told them, it was the last thing I said to them before they left the dressing room. Why did they do it? And he said, Archie just looked at me and went, it's because they're shite, Richard. And it was that. He said, I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with me telling them to do things that, to me, should have came naturally, and them not doing it. And maybe, you know, maybe Gullit was one of those guys, because, you know, if you're the most talented guy in your squad in your 40s, I always felt Glenn Hoddle was a bit like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's all podcasts in that. Guys like that do not win what they win without a huge competitive streak as a player, right? You fall into football. It's not like getting a job as a runner in an office and, you know, working your way up into, you know, kind of managing director or whatever. These guys obviously have that kind of mind. But I'm actually more impressed, I think, sometimes with those who can just turn it off and say, no, I do have this. It sustained me, but my skills were playing. I can't deal with people. I can't see solutions to things that I could do naturally. These guys clearly can't. How do I package this? How do I communicate this? How do we see other ways around it? It's not for me. I've worked very hard. I'm very wealthy, and I'm going to enjoy. And yep, absolutely, the media is also full of those people and those who just can't let it go. It's like a drug, isn't it? And sometimes it gets quite sad because they're very clearly not cut out for management at all, but they need, as you said, that dressing room for sure. Could be a showreel on some rash and silly challenges that Richard Gough's made, right enough. Before the break, Sunderland that night, again 1-0 down at half time, but come back. Who scores? Quinn and Phillips. But Phillips's goal, Adam, almost on his arse. Such invention, vision, creativity. Yeah, it's just he hits. I mean, Sunderland obviously they're mid-table at the start. They'll take a few kickings because they're just up. But it's very, very clear that these two are going to do some damage.
Yeah, worst possible team for them to play when it's the derby. Sunderland are just up, tails are up. The mood music is already going in the wrong direction, and it's just one of those moments, isn't it? You know it's going to be important. You think it's probably going to be important for the wrong reasons if you're a Newcastle fan, and it certainly goes that way. Like you said, they went ahead. Kieran Dyer, lovely finish on that one. But yeah, you never really thought that Newcastle were going to come back, even with that interesting back pass, shall we say? In injury time with it's Kevin Ball, wasn't it? 30 yards, and Yeah, that maybe just sums up Newcastle. Not that you would ever rely on something like that happening, but in another day that goes in. It's to each, and
absolutely
it prolongs the pain. That one, I think the fans were booing at defeat. I think they probably would still have been booing at a draw, even one as ridiculous as that, because they sensed it was only really going one way.
Yeah, and they were right. But one thing I love, by the way, about that derby, it does not get spoken enough in an English context enough, and maybe because there's been times when they haven't both been in the same league, but those two teams fucking hate each other. Proper old fat, and I love it. It's an unmissable game, and when you stick it in what looks like a biblical storm with England's golden boy hero sensationally dropped and a manager under pressure, and then the big man, little man of my dreams playing up front together. It doesn't get any better than that, especially when Rangers have just knocked out a Serie A side in the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, it is an incredible start, guys. Go to the end of October, and Sunderland are up third, I think, and Phillips or Quinn are in the score sheet for all but about 3 games of that opening, 10, 12, whatever it is. I mean, it's exactly
Quinn
what you
was
want.
Not surprised for his goals. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised, but he'd never really been prolific, had he? I can't recall a season where he was, he was always good. He was always really good, Niall Quinn, at all his clubs, but not a 20 goal a season guy. But he was tracking for that. Phillips is just one of these guys, he sniffs it, and it didn't matter who he played for, what level. If you could get the ball to him in the box, there was a very good chance it was going to end up in the net. Martin, I think he's one of your faves, isn't he, Ken Phillips? I think you've always been a long-term admirer.
Just loved him. That season especially, but again, a textbook example. We are recording this, obviously, in an international summer. Clearly, he had to be in that England squad for Euro 2000 at the end of the season. He played in some warm-up games and just looked like his feet were run backwards. It is a jump. People thrive sometimes in a particular environment, partnerships, the opposition, just the sense of the club manager, whatever, can't adapt, just cannot adapt to international football or other players or whatever, lack of confidence, whatever. I was disappointed by that, but he did an incredible season. Yeah, first 13 games takes us up to the end of October. Sunderland are third. And only 2 of those 13 games, Phillips and Quinn, were not on the score sheet, one of them. Before we go to the break, we'll just wrap up the North East, because back to Newcastle for a minute. Who takes over from Gullit for the 2 games? One of which is a 5-1 drubbing at Old Trafford. Very opposite for the time that we're recording at the moment.
Bobby Robson?
Steve Clarke takes charge for a couple of games.
Completely. And one of them, they scored 5 goals in one game.
No, they lost 5-1.
Oh, right. Yeah,
okay.
They lost 5-1 at Old Trafford, so they're
that tracks more than Steve Clarke. I mean, that's not a game's worth of goal to Steve Clarke's side. That's a month.
Yeah. So Bobby Robson comes back. Possibly a sense that his career, as storied and as loved as it had been, was maybe over. And this was, oh God, Newcastle have been about the future. That we've talked about this again and again and again. I mean, God love him, but he's an old man at the moment. He's always looked old. His hair can obviously went silver quite quickly. I did think this one will really, and then first game, home to Sheffield Wednesday, 8-0. Thank you very much, and off and running to salvage something in this season. Sometimes for all the breakdowns and all the data you have, it's just vibes at times in a dressing room, isn't it? And that guy's gone, and people play for Bobby Robson, Davey.
That simple, mate. People played for Bobby Robson. They loved him. And you can talk about, any deficiencies within his game. Although, as you say, I mean, the career, there are some stellar achievements in there at huge, enormous clubs. And he's one of these guys as well who went into different leagues and was successful, which I always think is very huge. Difficult to be able to do that, to adapt in the way he had. But it was his team. It was his club. that sometimes helps. Roy Hodgson at Palace, I think, is a good recent example of that, where maybe you think, well, there's a manager on the turn, but there's a little magic in there with that, an identification. And maybe, Newcastle fans, I think it's a club that is big on that. Sometimes maybe to outsiders, we can maybe feel it gets a bit much, but that doesn't matter. We're irrelevant in that discussion. It's a vibe and it matters to them, and therefore it matters to them as a club. It has to. Liverpool are the same, for example. And Bobby Robson came in, and instantly, Martin, the whole nation has sort of gone from lol, Ruud Gullit to I hope they do okay. Bobby's there now. I hope they do okay. And he was very lovable. I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying that. It's a quality we sometimes undervalue in football because we love the tough, ruthless, bastards, the pragmatic guys who can deliver. But no, you're right. Sometimes, firstly, by the way, sometimes going in and not being the previous guy is very useful, right? And we know that. But when you're going into a club that's broken, I can't think of a better salve for that particular football club than Bobby Robson. And can I just say to the players to go from Ruud Gullit to Steve Clarke to Bobby Robson? It's like an evening choice of movies, right? Where you're basically going from Schindler's List to Naked Gun there, haven't you? In 2 easy steps. But and as I say, certainly as an outsider looking in, when I saw that first result, I had a huge smile on my face. His post-match interviews were fantastic. And I remember, it might have been that season, it might have been the next, Shola Amiobi was asked. Bobby's famously, not good with like pronunciation of names. What does he call you? He smiled and went, Carol Cott. So that was Bobby, but he took a broken club and he pretty much instantly healed it. And like I say, if it's an emotional club and you can tap into that emotion, then you're going to go a lot further than the guys who don't understand that element of it, I would say.
And Adam, if you have an Alan Shearer figure in a club, so powerful a voice, you either have a manager who can come in and cuddle them and get them going, scores 4 in that 8-0 win, by the way, has scored, I think, 1 goal up until then, or you bring in a manager who's bigger than that and said, you fucking shape up or shit out, ship out, because this isn't good enough. You're not bigger than the club. I'll tell you what's happening here. Get on board or get rid, and then you maybe see other players growing out of that shadow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's quite a Cantona or Gaza type thing to manage and cajole and all that sort of stuff. But what I don't think you do is go picking fights for no reason with him when he's Alan Shearer. So I think I would imagine Bobby Robson just set some clear ground rules, guidelines, and then just kind of got out of his way, for want of a better word, and said, like, your
Brilliant.
Goals are sorted. You're the guy. Goals are okay, and we'll try and work around it. So again, from the outside, in 30 years of context, it feels like Gullit tried to set a marker down for whatever reasons, where it was arguably quite unnecessary. You don't want a situation where player power is above all important above all else, and they just do whatever they like. But I'm not sure that's really a Shearer trait. So yeah, I think Robson just handled it the way that makes sense for me. Yeah,
quite a pivotal year for Shearer because he makes that decision that Euro 2000 is going to be his last international, when he still had more years in him, but he wanted to give those years to Newcastle because he knew if he was trying to spin all the plates, he knew that career would cut short. And certainly after that injury that we spoke about a couple of seasons ago, you're like, is that going to be doable? Yeah. But he did eke out maybe a lot more of his career than
he said
some
that.
May imagine. Yeah,
you're absolutely correct. And he said that he never wanted to drop levels. He wasn't somebody who was going to go and play Championship or, America or whatever. He wanted to play for Newcastle at the very top level until he couldn't anymore. And that would be it. And I think, Martin, it was a very brave decision in a way, because, you're saying to Nation, I am prioritising, you're the England captain, you're saying I'm prioritising this club over the national team. And people don't like that. But did it elongate his career at that level by maybe 2 seasons? He thinks it did, and I'm not going to argue with him.
Neither am I. You might kick my head in. We'll take a break. We'll speak about some of the others after this. Welcome back to And It's Live, the history of the Premier League. We are in the opening months of 1999-2000. We will keep the big two back, I think, for later on the show. Let's talk about the team who will end October top of the league, Adam, and it's David O'Leary's babies. It's Leeds United, and again, we talked about it a lot in our first episode on this series in the summer of 99, that Leeds fans felt at the end of 98-99, we get kind of close there. In fact, it was the one before, wasn't it? We're not far away here. That this could be us challenging, and they look good for their money, Adam. Harry Kewell and Michael Bridges, I would probably pull out of the early part of the season anyway. Bridges especially just looked so good, so promising. Again, so much in English football. Injury is going to play a part in that story, sadly. But Kewell looks a find, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and I think Bridges is the one that is maybe a little bit unloved, because I don't think he really repeats this first few months. Really, I think he's top goal scorer, isn't he, going into the autumn? And it makes you think that Sunderland strike force the year before, like
yeah, absolutely,
it's fascinating. And you look at that, and I remember thinking that's a bit of a strange one, taking the third choice Sunderland forward, if you like, but you can't argue with the output of it. And I think that's just the very on brand for where Leeds were at this point. Let's bring in some early 20s young British players that can come in and be the babies, like you said, and really start to implement what the manager is looking for. Kewell, I was a huge fan of Kewell. He obviously will go on and do lots and lots of great things for Leeds, but yeah, definitely those two would be the ones that I would pick out. But for me, in this autumn spell, Bridges is such a surprise, and he's their main man for a bit. Yeah,
forgotten about because of injury, I guess, and just as you said, never been able to replicate that. David, just casting an eye over those, first 2.5 months or whatever, up to the end of October, Leeds they're very consistent. I think they would be actually over this piece of just winning games. They should. Yeah, they've beaten Sunderland at home. That's, as we've talked about, a big run of wins. But again, in fixtures, you're like, well, if you're going to be one of the boys, you're going to have to do this. A ridiculous kind of 4-4 at Goodison Park. But the 2 defeats in that opening spell, home to Liverpool, after being 1-up, again at half-time, and of course Old Trafford, but they had their chances. I think Kewell hits the post when he probably should have scored. They look like they're going to hold out quite a reasonably entertaining game, close contest certainly, and then is it York with a couple of goals late on, because of course that's kind of what clubs like that are able to do, and just coming short against the big 4, big 6, or whatever you want to call it then, but absolutely taking care of business elsewhere. That's the story.
Yeah, and that's what I thought they were. I thought they were a very, very good, young, promising side who would be in the upper reaches of the table, but I didn't see them as being contenders. And maybe that's partly big club bias. And I know that Leeds fans will say, well, we'd won the title only 8 years before. But they're a big club, but to me, I find it difficult to think of them as a potentially title-winning club, which maybe is a little unfair, but it's the generation I'm from. And they were really excited. I mean, there was a buzz about the place, Martin. Let me tell you. But I didn't get the impression. To me, they were sort of like, you know, we're in a World Cup as we record, and there are always dark horses, and you say, oh, you tip them as your dark horses. But dark horses also means you don't think they're going to win it. That's why you're calling them that. And I think they were in that as a very kind of respectable side who played good football, who had this wealth of players that you would pay money to watch. You know, that was the other thing about them. They were a very, very good side, very likeable, very sort of zeitgeist. You know, they were very sort of turn of the century. They felt like that. They felt modern, and they felt like what they were doing was modern. Of course, as we later find out, what they were doing was a story as old as time itself, which is they were spending money they didn't have, chasing a dream with no backup plan. But I think that's actually a perfect illustration, isn't it, that group of results, as to where I think the consensus was on Leeds at this time. They will be your maybe fourth, fifth side. They will do very well against sides that you would expect them to beat. But when it comes to that actual, can I get into this lane? They're not Arsenal. They're not Manchester United. At the moment, they're not Liverpool. It's sort of a place where and this is maybe unfair, and apologies to any Spurs fans who will hear this, it's kind of where I perennially place even Tottenham when they're in a good spell, in that I expect you to get to about there, but there, never. And that's how I felt about this Leeds side. Of course, it's the following season where you begin to think, actually, maybe I called that wrong. But right now, they're a sort of seventh seed at Wimbledon for me at this point.
Yeah, I wonder, Adam, if ifs and buts and all that, and it clearly was a deal that had to be done. But if they maybe held on to Hasselbank for this season, just kept that bit of experience, that bit of reliability up front. Darren Huckerby looks, a good signing, given how impressive he's been at Coventry. Not going to be anywhere near as impactful as Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, but Viduka will come down the line. They'll try the old hands like Robbie Fowler and stuff. It's maybe obviously Alan Smith coming through as their boy, but that absolute end product, a striker that is just banging goals in. That's why again we go back to Michael Bridges. I mean that if that had stayed in check, then who knows. But maybe just Hasselbank for that transition. Who knows what happens this season, because it's not a vintage one.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned that before. I think that either he went away a season early or a season late on bringing in the replacement, if you like. But they probably do miss that focal point, if you can call Hasselbank that. But it's certainly a point up there that you can build off of. Bridges, as we said, did great. Huckerby, sort of more of a supporting link man, really, in that sense. And they do miss someone. I quite like looking back at teams like this, though. I wish my club, we were allowed to do season by season progression and just build and keep going and do this and do that and eventually get to a point, because it's kind of textbook, really. Yes, they'll lose players. Yes, they'll have injuries. Yes, they'll have issues. But just that, I like seeing a team that grow incrementally each season and get the space to do it and the time to do it, because there's not as much big expectations or anything on them. So yeah, this isn't them as their full form, as David said, but it's still a couple of steps in the right direction for me. Yeah.
It would be lovely to have that grown up kind of climate in which to work. Okay, treble winning champions then. How about their hangover? Well, it doesn't show itself initially, Adam. Kind of off and running, looking very nice. Mentioned that 5-1. Go to Highbury early on that season. Everybody just waiting for this game. It's an absolute mouth-watering prospect, given how the season panned out previously. This is the first Sky Digital game, by the way, with all the look from here and look from underneath the dugout and whatever. Roy Keane that day is about as captain's a performance as you ever see. It is just, he's almost by force of will just pushing the ball into the net, grabbing the game, running the game. This personal rivalry with Vieira, always the kind of dominant narrative thread. Stuff to make up for, obviously, with the way the Champions League kind of ended for him. I don't know. But he's an interesting character at the moment, Adam, because his contract's running out this season, and he is making it known that he won't be fucked about, and he will move. He'll go to Italy. He'll go elsewhere. I do wonder whether that's posturing and just the art of the deal. Some people say no, he would have been absolutely serious. He would have walked if he wasn't getting the cash he thought he deserved. Performances like this forces the hand, of course.
Yeah, they do a real captain's performance, like you said. Again, maybe a bit of a comparison to the Sunderland Newcastle game where Ljungberg scores for Arsenal, but then Keane himself comes roaring back. Arsenal still trying to find their feet a little bit. We mentioned Henry coming in, and Davor Suker coming in. It's a wee bit clunky for me right now. Their Kanu's up top, Bergkamp's in behind, Henry's kicking about. Obviously, they will go and develop that quite considerably with Henry, but he's only been in the door 2 weeks at this point, 3 weeks maybe, because it's a very early derby. So, yeah, they'll obviously get better and they'll improve. But I think United's muscle memory, desire to get that over the line, whatever you want to call it, I think definitely rings out, and they have a really good start to August, don't they? And Keane's central to that for me.
It's Arsenal who've got the hangover, David. Ill-disciplined, inconsistent. You don't want to give up that momentum early, but not quite themselves. Patrick Vieira again at West Ham, I think, has a go at Razor Ruddock. You don't really want to be trying that too often, but Patrick Vieira can take care of himself just about anyone else. But we saw this a bit last season. They, as brilliant as they are, there's something not quite right at this moment in time.
There's the petulance at times, yeah. There's no getting away from that, and it doesn't change the fact that they're an absolutely brilliant football side. But yeah, there were times where that they could show that side, and of course we get the fabulous. Was it too early to call it a meme back then? But these days it would be a meme of Arsene Wenger's inability to see things on football fields. Some things. Some things. He had an amazing ability to catch things that adversely affected his team. I did notice that. But yeah, it's a strange one because this is never the right thing to do. But as a layman, I understand football managers, directors of football, technical directors these days, recruitment teams, they have to go in a lot of things with a player signing. But sometimes I think as an outsider and an amateur, you're allowed to go and feel. And does a player feel right? And Davor Suker, for example, a wonderful player, but it didn't feel right, did it? It just, you thought, I don't know, I don't see that. And it sort of is that, and he demonstrates that where he is a wonderful player and he shows it in moments, but he's not really what Arsenal require. It's interesting because we talk about a hangover from United. Potentially. But it's an extraordinary season and they've got that Champions League, but they are used to winning things, Martin, and coming back. And they've got a manager and they've got a captain who have those relentless focuses, who do have the attitude of you party the night you win it, then the next morning you go, right, what's next? And it was imbued throughout the club. Arsenal don't have that. Arsenal haven't had that period of sustained success yet. They've had great seasons and they've had trophy wins really throughout their history in little clumps, but not that period of domination. And I think there was a sense of frustration from Arsenal players at this point that it wasn't quite going the way that they expected it to. It's also difficult, I think, when you come up short in so many competitions in a short period of time. It's got to knock your confidence. Why did they get over the line on each of these? Maybe if they'd won that FA Cup match, for example, and United had won the league and Champions League, but they'd won the FA Cup, it's a slightly different feeling going into the season. It's maybe that feeling of we're playing catch-up here and we don't like that. We don't want to be the side that is doing that. In a way, Roy Keane's inability to play that Champions League final was one of the best things that could have happened to Manchester United for this season, because you're absolutely right. He is playing like a man possessed. He's written about it in his book where he said he had this burning sense of, I need to make up for, I missed out, I suppose, the easiest way to say it. And he carries it into this early season, doesn't he? And I don't think you can slacken off if you've got him, revved up and going into it. I think you'd be a braver man than me if you then were going, don't care, won 3 things last year, Roy. But I think for Arsenal, there was, malaise is too strong a word, Martin, more just a sense of looking around at each other and going, lads, right, why? Why is this just not quite clicking? And a little sense of growing frustration, which came out in discipline issues.
We'll talk over the piece about how Arsenal couldn't never retained the title, and how different maybe this is at Old Trafford. Ferguson and Keane being, they clashed ultimately, but very similar personalities. The man leading the club, the man leading the dressing room, the team on the pitch, standards. And you're absolutely right, David. The season from heaven. And it's hard. We've talked about it often enough for a variety of reasons over the years. When teams, players hit their emotional peak, what they always dreamed of, how do you get up again and get going again? And it's, that All Blacks thing of moving from good to great. We've won the World Cup finally. And then they're just noticing we're not giving that extra 10%. We're not digging it out. Well, why not? We've done it. You have to manufacture it, and guys like that, as I've said a million times, get up early just to practice being angry. But it does help. It does kind of rub off, and Old Trafford has that in Highbury at this minute. Maybe just doesn't. Alex Ferguson, as always, talks to the world when he does his pressers and post-match stuff. Adam, I know you love all that shit. A couple of times in this early period, once when United were going well, asked the same question, and we're just about to talk about a fairly horrendous bit of form that comes into October. Says the same thing. Doesn't matter as long as you're around in the winter and you'll come through March, April. That's what it's all about. And this repeated message, not just to United fans who might maybe getting either a wee bit ahead of themselves or a wee bit worried, but to everybody else in the league. What happens now just isn't important. We know where we need to be when we need to be there. We'll see you there. We'll be the ones in front, kind of thing. But it is a reminder to Leeds and to a few others that this is a marathon, this whole business of league football. And
they're the only ones with the experience and the context of it, because they've dominated the 6 or 7 years so far. So it's one of those things, isn't it, that when confidence spills into arrogance, and I don't think it ever quite manages to cross. I don't think it ever tips over the line with Ferguson, ever, really. I think he can generally, for the most point, back up everything that he says with evidence, which I always appreciate. It is one thing to say it and it's another thing to do it, and if there's anybody in the entire country that can back up what he says with what he does at this stage, it is Ferguson. So at the point, I remember thinking, well, that is very, very confident, but with the benefit of context and hindsight and all that sort of stuff, it's just what it should be. So I completely agree. Sorry.
I wonder, Davey, just on that last point, United's treble just comes at the right moment. If it had happened a couple of years before, if they'd gone past Monaco and got that big win finally, maybe they weren't ready for it. Maybe they weren't mature enough. Maybe they hadn't had to suffer the pain, and maybe they just get it at the right time. Nice blend of youth and experience. But even the youth, they've got medals in their pocket by now. They've got a few medals in their pocket by now, and they can absorb it. They can digest that big night and say, right, okay, but I want it. I want more. And you know what I mean? That hunger. They don't win it again, obviously, for the best part of a decade, but it's hard. But just even going again league-wise, sometimes a dressing room just gets things when they're not mature enough to appreciate it, and they can't cope after. we know very well.
No, I think that's a good, no, I think it's a great point. And I think you're right. And I think that what Ferguson and Keane had and imbued this era of United with was a healthy hatred of losing, not a fear of it, a disgust at it. And what they also, because of their personality types, where nothing was ever enough, which I'm sure, by the way, at times must have been horrendous to work for and with. But it was always one trophy. It's one trophy. And dynasties only happen when you get that attitude of, well, great, right? We've won some magic. That's what we do here, right? Go in and celebrate it, enjoy the night, but come on. And that confidence that Adam spoke about there, it is born of experience, and there is bravado in it from Ferguson. He knows what he's doing there. But it is, I think, based on, and there is a difference between having a fear of losing and having a hatred of losing that drives you. And it does, and it drives them powerfully every time. And the knowledge as well, Martin, that they've known what it's like to miss out and recover, 95 being case in point. That belief that it gives you to say that firstly, that knowledge of how it feels to miss out, which can act, and you keep that close to your heart and you use that as a motivation and a driver. But also that belief that we know that we can come back, even if it doesn't go right for us. So the fear of losing is removed. And what is left with was this, we despise us. I also think one of the things Ferguson was good at is the players would all say, if we lost a match, and this doesn't work at a middle club, it only works at a very, very top club, then it wasn't a pleasant place to go to work. And you then redoubled your efforts to make sure that we won, because then it was a pleasant place to go to work. You can't do that at a middling club because you're going to lose matches to better sides and you've got to pick them up again the following week because confidence will go. But at an elite side, as Ferguson proved, you can do that. It's a stick and carrot thing, isn't it? Look, if we lose this match, your life is miserable. If we win this match, your life is very nice. And it worked. But also the belief that the players have in those two individuals, Martin, the trust, the complete and utter trust and belief that they have in both of them, that when Ferguson says, we will be all right when it matters, they have that. The nearest I can think of that, and it wasn't for so long a period, was Chelsea under Mourinho, that first spell, where if he said something, the players almost manifested it into existence because they believed it so powerfully.
And we'll get to it gladly, but he effectively created a team that he could fuck off, basically, but they managed themselves for 10 years because of that kind of core. It is an interesting one. That I imagine the rage, the fury is about your own standards. And sometimes, and this definitely can only happen at big clubs, even if you've won, we weren't good enough today, though that's beneath our standards. And actually, sometimes defeats managers are very relaxed if they felt, well, that's football. You have to accept that defeat is part of sport. You will not win every game. You will not win every, and obsessing about that will turn you into a mental case. And it is just accepting that's part of it. But why did that happen? Were we at our best? Are we giving enough? Are we demanding enough? And all the rest of it. The rocky period, though, guys, or the narrative around the rocky period, starts in the goals. Mark Bosnich obviously came to Old Trafford in the summer. Long story short, Ferguson hated him. At odds, actually, with what Bosnich sometimes did on the pitch. He could be very, very good and make big saves. Not a character, not a professional, I don't think, that he enjoyed having about. Famously said, Serie A is where to go if you're buying defenders or goalkeepers. That's the absolute ground. And Massimo Taibi came. It was short, it was brief, but it was full of wonder.
That sounds like my career in lovemaking.
Yeah, absolutely. But you get the job done. United go to Anfield and they won 3-2. I mean, Tybee comes for one of the Liverpool goals, doesn't get there. But he also there's a couple of good saves in there as well. But maybe the writing is on the wall. And famously, of course, the 3-3 draw at home to Southampton. A Letizia trundler somehow squirms through Tybie's legs. Makes you think, doesn't it, how that goal goes in. I'm not entirely sure a goalkeeper can be blamed for a 3-3 fucking draw at home to Southampton, but there we are. That's how we work. We don't have the bandwidth to go.
But he was. He was.
So he was, and he was blamed. United go to Stamford Bridge. They lose 5-0. 5-0. Even Sutton scored. Chelsea right from the off. Goal in the first minute. And I remember thinking, "Whoa, right, okay, maybe this is the hangover then. Maybe this is really starting to set in. This is falling apart." United go to Spurs in a couple of weeks. Spurs and lose 3-1, of course, lads, it's Tottenham or lads, it's Spurs, whatever. Well, this is all kind of falling apart, Adam. But he's got his difficulties. We have kind of hinted at it before, and they're not going to really be resolved probably until Van der Sar comes in. But it's a hell of an important position for the confidence of a team, is it not?
It is, and we spoke about Schmeichel also had his ups and downs, a lot more ups than downs. But I think especially with goalkeeper, it's important that you save shots. Obviously, that is the most important thing. But I think a lot of it is trust, dependability, aggression as well, and just sheer presence, which I don't think Tybie and Bosnich have. Like Schmeichel got lobbed a lot, came off his line and cleared a lot as well. So that's the risk reward type situation, and he's a huge presence. So I think they never replaced that. Van der Sar, completely different character, but again, presence, commanding, without being as in your face as Schmeichel was. So I think it's just that. I think it's, again, quite relevant to just now. It doesn't matter if you are a good player. It's are you a good player, and can you be a good player here right now in this club?
Yeah.
And I think Schmeichel embodied that while not being perfect. And the other two, you could, if you wanted to do a deep dive analysis, and I'm sure you might find that Mark Bosnich was technically better at certain situations than
I think,
without a shadow of a doubt. Overall,
I think
Bosnich's personality was the wrong fit culturally, totally, which they should have known because they'd had him as a kid, by the way. So that's the idea that it came as a shock to
it's
them.
A small world. Right.
They should.
You do know what you get by this point.
It's that arrogance. It's that I'll sort him. Right. He'll not do that with me. That's what it is from Ferguson. Tybie was never good enough to play for Manchester United, Martin. And I say that as somebody who had seen him in Serie A and watched him subsequently. He was a good-ish, middle-of-the-road goalkeeper. He was in this era, he was a Derby County level goalkeeper. That is Ferguson's love and admiration for Serie A, which is deep and genuine. His respect for what comes out of Serie A, it is legitimately massive, and that is therefore valuing the store you've bought something from rather than the product in this instance. Van der Sar is an interesting one because I could see why Barthez might have worked for United because, personality, etc. And he had the medals, that's the other thing about him, and he had but it didn't quite click. Van der Sar, I actually think there are similarities to Schmeichel in that Van der Sar, obviously physically, a huge presence, but also somebody who will scream at you. This is a defence who are used to being screamed at when they concede a goal, whether or not it was their fault. He will do that. He has that Dutch mentality, and
he's Dutch. Yeah.
Go on. He's Dutch.
Dutch.
The way that a lot of people think that Dutch people, and I have a friend, hi Heidi, who's Dutch and married to my friend Gordon, and he says that the amount of times that they'll be out in social situations in Scotland and people will look at her like she's just said the rudest thing they can possibly imagine, and it's because it's literally as a cultural thing. They do not mean it, but in the way that we British people will couch something very gently to avoid causing offence, they will simply say they will go from A to B in a sentence as quickly as possible, and some of those meanings could be lost. And Van der Sar did that. Van der Sar had that, and he would say there would be no courtesy, no niceties about it. It was, you should have done this and you didn't. And I think they were slightly institutionalized by Schmeichel. I think they needed that. Yeah. I think they needed the guy behind them that was saying, "You useless bastards," in whatever manner it came out,
just to keep them going. Yeah, having done European press conferences when you get a Dutch team and you get Dutch journalists like, "Oh, steady on, lads! I mean, fucking hell." But it's just the way they go.
We have sat in the room, listeners. Yeah, Martin and I and Adam have sat in a room with Dutch. There was one in particular, actually, Premier League legend, Ruud van Nistelrooy. Yeah. And the Dutch journalists basically, it was surgical. They sat there and, oh man, and that's what they're like as people. But it's just different. We phrase our language in a courteous way. To provide effect, and sometimes actually we phrase it in a deliberately courteous way that is meant to carry offence, but we go the other way. But Van der Sar also, he was just so supremely confident. He's massive, and he's 6'5", I think, Van der Sar.
Yeah, well, and we'll come to that. We will come to Van der Sar because he doesn't arrive in England massively confident. Absolutely horrific time at the end of his time at Juve. Anyway, Adam, back to Chelsea for a minute, and when you're talking about Peter Schmeichel there, I thought we were going to get trust, encouragement, reward for a moment. They are 3 behind the top of the league after this 5-0 win with 2 games in hand. So all the emphasis now shifts on them fulfilling some of the potential, some of the promise that they've shown in recent years. They've not been far away. People forget, again, that last season, that treble winning season for United, that Chelsea were very much in the picture until late on, same as the season before. So okay, here we go. Then they lose at Anfield. Then they're 2-0 up at home to Arsenal. And Arsene Wenger chucks on the one called Kanu. And the most ridiculous set of circumstances occurs, especially, of course, that famous third goal. I don't think Martin Tyler's voice has ever been the same since. But yeah, again, just so many of these clubs, Adam, there's something there, but once they're asked the question, right, well, can you do this now? Can you do this for the next 6 or 7 weeks because you're going to need to?
No, they can't. And I think it's that consistency aspect that we spoke about with Ferguson there. They don't have that in the bank. They don't have that. I back myself. They get that great win against Manchester United, and then they win one of their next 8 games, I think it was. And okay, there's Anfield, there's playing against Arsenal. There's also Derby County away, they get trounced 3-1. There's Bradford at home.
Sunderland batter them.
Scramble over the line, Sunderland batter them, draws with Everton and West Ham. So it's just exactly what you would expect, I guess, from a club that is good in patches and not got the consistency. And whether that is, as I said before, whether that's a manager who at this point is very, very junior. He didn't have a huge managerial career anyway, but he's very, very inexperienced as a manager. Lots of flux, lots of big personalities, lots of continental aspect. They've been through the mill in the last couple of years, going from Hoddle to Gullit and through to Vialli. It's the complete opposite to what I mentioned about Leeds, trying to build on quicksand and trying to roll those double sixes and just try and get yourself over the line and see what happens. And clubs need a plan at this level. They need to decide who they are and what they're going to be. I don't think it is just enough then and now to just gather a gaggle.
Adam, seeing this era, who does that come from? And I agree with you, but I'm interested in, are we still in the era where it's set by a manager by a forceful... Sure. That'll be interesting when we come to think maybe it changes. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think any club trying to just go month to month can do it. But I'm just fascinated in this period, who does that plan come from? Is it an owner thing, a chairman thing? We don't really have directors of football yet.
No, we don't.
We don't really have owners. Yes, we don't really have owners who are... I mean, Doug Ellis is a bit of a character. Sam Haman, a bit of a character, to say the least.
Ken Bates.
But even then, within their own circles, and they're going to be respected for bringing the right guys in and leaving them to kind of do it. You're nowhere near the guy who has put so much money in that they believe, well, I really want it to look like this, and that's not good enough. And they start, going down to the dressing room and stuff like that. So the Ferguson blueprint, the Ferguson model is still pretty much it, which of course was the model at Anfield and Manchester United before that, and all the rest of it. And the gaffer still runs the show.
And I think, you look at it and you look at the three clubs that we've spoken about most recently. We're talking primarily about Alex Ferguson, David O'Leary, and Arsene Wenger. We're not necessarily talking about the players underneath at this point. So I think it is them that are shaping this, and those are the three right now that look to be building the plan and implementing something. You've got other clubs, so we mentioned there, like Chelsea and Newcastle, saying they're doing stuff, but they can't get the consistency in the dugout to let them.
And that, as was talked about at length today, the crucial lieutenant, Keane and Vieira, are emblematic of their teams, and they drive their teams like captains used to do, because that was still very much seen as the role. Really quickly, David, before we wrap up, I don't think this is a vintage season. However, 15-minute cameo from a substitute like Kanu, the 90th minute winner from that impossible angle in the rain was just an example, another reminder that, God, this is fun, Not the best iteration of the Premier League, but even still, they've got players like that who turn games on their head within 15 minutes in the most ridiculous way. They come from all over the world to do it. You can't not watch this.
And it's still new, that it's still vibrant and exciting and new. That here are these players, and there's still an air of mystery when some of these guys comes in, Martin, because nobody has watched them 20 times the previous season. We knew Kanu from Ajax, occasionally getting glimpses of him, so there's this element of mystery when they arrive, and then when they arrive and they do things like that, it really does just add into it. It was so novel, still so fun. People have described before English football in the 90s as that was the era that it finally went colour, after the sort of monochrome feelings of crumbling stadia, violence, etc. And suddenly here are these wonderful, exciting players. And also here's something that Ferguson deserves, I think, a bit of credit for, is that the way his successful side played was so rock and roll. We spoke earlier about, the flying wingers, etc. Everyone is now trying to play Wenger's sides as well. Everyone is trying to play with this pace and dynamism. It's not quite as widespread as the Pep influence that has spread through the world game. But there was definitely in the 90s a change to, can we win by scoring lots of goals? Best exemplified by Arsenal. The change between Arsenal 1989 and 1999, it is enormous. It's a mentality shift. But the whole league has gone like that. And when I think about this era, I think in multicolored textures, a kaleidoscope of talent. For the first time, this was the first I was experiencing this. And you're absolutely right when you say it kind of became, you can't miss any game that Sky are showing, or you can't miss a match a day, because you will miss something that you wish you'd saw.
That'll do. It's good to be back. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. That was good fun.
Cheers, David.
Pleasure as always, guys.
The final months of the millennium next week. Until then, bye for now.